sometimes less is more. They
Mm.
might have a point on a right back in his 1v1 defending, but they might have 7 or 8 clips,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
they can make the point with 2 clips. I was in with the 23s all the time, was treated like a full-time member of staff, wasn't treated as an intern really. The same kind of goes for the other age groups really. We utilise in play for individuals to look at their stuff with coaches sometimes when they go on day release, and then as well to share videos and analysis with them, even at half time in a game. For example, you're showing them something that can maybe help them in the second half. You don't want them doing it for the sake of doing it. You want them to get something out of it. And even if it's they want to look at a specific clip or a specific bunch of clips, that's better than them just coming in and saying wanting to sit through my clips and just sitting there in silence watching, because it makes them look like
Yeah.
they're doing something. Realistically, I knew I needed a master's because the industry was growing and the people that were getting involved in it. And an internship at undergrad just wasn't really enough anymore.
Hello and welcome back to my channel, and today's guest is Matty Owen, who is an academy analyst currently working with Middlesbrough Football Club. So Matty does actually oversee the academy analysis department. He also works quite heavily with the under-21s. We speak about the kind of work that he does in terms of the analysis roles and how that fits in with the development of the younger players. So Matty talks about actually how they at Middlesbrough had a lot of players last season that actually made that step up from the 21s to actually get in and around the first team, which is obviously the whole point of an academy. So Mike tells us what he gets up to day to day. He's also got a master's degree as well, which we touch upon. And I think he's actually the first academy analyst that I've had on this channel. So I think that will be quite relevant because obviously there's lots of viewers of this channel that may be working in academies and also maybe not even at that stage yet, and that might be your next step. So Matty also shares some good advice for job interviews and how to kind of prep for that job that you want. So without further ado, let's get into the conversation with Matty Owen. Matty, welcome to the channel. How are you doing today?
I'm very good, mate. How are you?
I'm good. I'm really good. Thank you. Appreciate you jumping on. It's now pre-season, so I know you've mentioned you've been away, you've been playing a bit of golf and stuff. So appreciate your time jumping on. So as you will know, and as other people will know, I've had other people on here in terms of different analysts, but up until now, I've never actually had an analyst on that's working in an academy, and that's just kind of I don't know how it's felt like that. So really good to have you on. So for those that don't know who you are, Matty, if you want to just give a quick intro, who you are and what you're currently doing in your role at the moment.
Yeah, so I'm Matty Owen, and I work for Middlesbrough, and I work with their under-21s as their analyst, and then obviously head up the academy as well. Um, but we all have the shared responsibility for the younger age groups as well, so kind of dip in and out of those age groups as well. But main responsibilities with the under-21s.
Yeah, perfect. So there's a few things, obviously, doing a bit of research before this, like there's a few topics that kind of are important I want to speak about. So obviously you've got the progression, because I know we'll talk about in a later in the call, but in terms of starting with the really younger ones, and you said now you're predominantly more with the 21s, you've kind of worked your way up there. You've done a master's as well, which we'll touch upon. And in terms of kind of having a bit of an input in terms of hiring, but also dealing with kind of volunteers and interns as well. So there's lots of people that are watching that might be relevant to as well. So if we just go back, Matt, just kind of, you did your degree 2018, 2021 in coaching in PE, was that right?
Yeah, so I did my degree at York St John University in a, like you say, sports coaching and physical education degree. First year was kind of like a broad sense, so you dip in and out of sports science as well, so biomechanics, physiology. But then second and third year was a lot more pedagogical, education, practitioner side of things, where essentially the degree is very geared towards being a PE teacher.
Yeah.
And to prepare before I came across analysis, that's probably the route I was going to go down. But I always knew football was my passion, and I wanted to work in it. And then from there, opportunities cropped up. But that was the degree I did, and it
Yeah.
was good to be fair, and it's helped me a lot, even though it was nothing really to do with analysis.
Yeah. So then you mentioned, so when did you get the interest in analysis? When were you introduced to that? And when did you decide that that's probably a path that you wanted to take?
Yeah, so it was the back end of my first year. Leeds came in. At the time, they were still Category 2. They came in just asking for a few volunteers to come in, film the games, maybe do a little bit of coding, but it was something that took my interest. Obviously, Leeds. I'm from Leeds. Leeds being my local club, so
Mm.
it worked quite well,
Yeah.
and it fit quite well around the job I was doing as well at the time. So I just thought I'd jump at the opportunity, see where it took me. If
Yeah.
I enjoyed it, happy days. If I didn't, then it was just experience that you could add to your CV, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So in that role then, is that what you were doing, kind of filming the younger age groups? And did you get to do any coding at Leeds, or was it just filming?
Yeah, so obviously you start off by filming the games. And obviously, as an intern, if you've never filmed a game before, it's not daunting, but it's a bit more difficult than you think.
Yeah.
trying to keep your focus for that long. But obviously, filming the younger age groups, and then first and foremost, just creating bits and bobs clips on there. But then taking the opportunity when asked, or they sometimes put in the group chat, does anybody want to come in to film a training session today, and do a little bit of coding there, and from there, and it just kind of kicked on from there. Took more opportunities from there, really.
Yeah, perfect. So then, and that was in your first year, you said that came about the end of the
Well,
first.
so the opportunity came around the back end of my first year. I didn't start until the start of my second year, so kind of like pre-season.
Yeah.
Pre-season 2019-20 was that. But like I said, the opportunity came around the back end of my first year. They were looking for people to start next season.
Okay, and then you mentioned like you probably at the start when you started uni, the PE teacher was the route. So from that Leeds experience, was that when it switched? Then are you from then on? Are you thinking this is probably what I'm going to do instead?
Yeah, so I kind of the first couple of times I went in, it was like, oh, well, this is really interesting. I've never heard of it before. It was still quite new, and it still is quite new. Obviously, it's growing a lot. But from there, I just kind of put all my eggs into that basket in a way. I kind of knew that was where the route I wanted to go down. Obviously, I knew it'd be difficult and not straightforward. And when I got to third year, like I had to make the decision: do I chase this, do a masters, or do I just say, well, it was good fun doing it in that 2 years, but I need to think about my career. But I knew if I had the determination to do it, I'd be successful, hopefully.
Yeah.
And obviously, in the end, I was, and no regrets looking back.
Yeah, definitely. So then, in terms of then that masters, because that is something that I did want to talk about. So you did that at Worcester, didn't you? So I know it's quite a popular kind of master's degree there. So there's lots of people I know that have done that. So first question, really, what was that like? But then also, because it was one of them kind of ones where you were based in the club, so you were based, or did you do that along? So you were at Wolves, weren't you? So you know them kind of ones, they probably didn't really exist as much when I was kind of at that stage, but you are seeing a lot more of them now when it's like the studentship where you do your masters, but you are solely like you're in a club, so you're getting that experience as well. So how did that kind of work, Matty?
So obviously, when it rolled around to the back end of third year, deciding what I wanted to do, I think realistically, I knew I needed a master's because the industry was growing and the people that were getting involved in it, that an internship at undergrad just wasn't really enough anymore unless you got lucky at your club and you stayed. And I kind of was umming and ahhing about staying at Leeds and doing it, but Leeds unfortunately couldn't fund it. And so then it was a case of saying, well, might as well look elsewhere if there's any sort of opportunities. And one of the lads who worked at Leeds, Dan, he just kind of said Wolves is probably one of the better ones to look to try and go for, because from what he's seen before, it had been around a while. And so I applied for that one in amongst other ones, but I knew that was probably the one that I really wanted to get, just because as well I'd seen like their alumni in a way from Analyst that they'd had do the program through Worcester at them. But so you apply for that, and like I say, they fund your master's course, and then you work for them. You spend all your time at your club. You do a week in September and a week in January at the university, but the rest of it's all done online, which is really good. And it's done in the evenings as well, so it's based around your experience rather than your experience being based around a degree in a way. And what I said to our interns is who are looking to maybe go on to do masters is look to do that one, because a lot of other ones, you're on placement at a club, but you have to be in a day a week at the university, 2 days a week. And even though it doesn't seem a lot, like that day might be a day off from your club, and it just kind of adds up and stacks up. But for me, Worcester was all, I didn't apply to anywhere else really. I knew Worcester was probably the best one to go to, and the people I know that have been on it have obviously, it's grown out. And like you mentioned, the studentships, I think everyone who goes to different clubs now, you're seeing their funded studentships just expand because the people who have done the degree there just going out to different clubs and then getting their clubs involved in it as well. And it's just growing and growing. So I'd probably still say it's one of the best ones there, probably if not the best.
Yeah. So you were actually all in the club in Wolves effectively full time then. So you were as a normal member of staff, but you were doing your masters in the evenings and then them 2 intensive kind of weeks you mentioned.
Yeah. So it's essentially you were a full time member of staff at Wolves. I was in with the 23s all the time.
Yeah.
Was treated like a full time member of staff. Wasn't treated as an intern really. Obviously, you're in a position where you're learning, and sometimes maybe you think when you're working all these long hours that, oh, I'm just an intern, but equally you're better for the experience. And, you know, I wouldn't have had it any other way, really. And like I said, you weren't treated any differently, really, which was really, really good. And it's probably helped set me up for where I'm at now and given me, you know, good experience of how to deal with coaches, how to deal with other people, and just kind of the job in general, really.
Yeah, definitely. So, because you did say like you kind of thought upon yourself that you probably did need a master's because an undergrad and a bit of, you know, undergrad and one internship these days is probably not enough. Like say, unless you get lucky, like obviously there's the chance that you can do it with that, but the fact that it's so saturated, there's lots of people. It is about standing out, and obviously to do a master's, but not only just any master's. Like you've obviously done a, you know, well-respected master's in a club as well, and you've got that extra experience. So when that's come to the end, then you've obviously graduated from your masters, and then see that this is when Boro comes along. So how long have you been at Boro now? So how long ago did you join
So
them?
I moved to Boro just before I finished my, because the masters it says it last year, but it's more 18 months, 2 years kind of thing.
Yeah,
So I moved there in April 2022. Yeah, April 22.
yeah,
I always get my years confused now. Yeah, I moved there at the beginning of April 2022. You know, it was quite lucky, really. It was the first full-time job I'd applied for. It kind of rolled past January, and it was like start looking for jobs. And this one, I saw it really last minute. I think I applied really last minute, and then obviously had the interview and got a job. And I was happy because I was able to move back up north and whatnot. But so just kind of moved in there, went in there at the start as under 16s, which was really good. Worked with the coach and, you know, two good lads who obviously have now moved on to different jobs. And then in that summer, so like I said, one of the lads moved up to Celtic, Ross, and then Alex, who was the 21s, he then moved to Manchester United, and it kind of just opened up the pathway for me, really. Yeah, I'm where I am now.
So did you say that was the first job that you actually, like the first full-time job you applied for and you actually got it? Because that's pretty rare if that's the case.
Yeah, from a master's point of view, yeah.
Yeah.
It there was, yeah, obviously you didn't want to sort of, it's difficult when you're in that kind of studentship period, because obviously Wolves have funded your masters, and but equally you got to think about yourself and try and think about getting a job. And at university in the January time, they'd kind of said to us, this is, you know, the time we should all be looking to start applying for jobs. And they just said, like, there's a Middlesbrough one on there. That's probably something that everyone should be applying for. And I kind of thought, oh, was it too early? Was it not? But I think in the end, I just kind of decided to do it. And, you know, I'm glad I did, because I'm still there now and loving it.
Definitely. So started with the 16. So as I said right at the start, Matty, so you're the first kind of academy analyst that we've had on. So do you want to just give a bit of a overview of what the role of the academy analyst is, and maybe how, you know, how that, you've not really done first team, so we'll speak about some of the differences, but how, you know, what are you doing day to day, and what's your main purpose of being an academy analyst, really?
Well, it obviously differs from, so 16s and then 18s and 21s is a little bit more different. 16s, it's a lot more your own performance based and looking maybe at more individuals or what you've done as a team. There's obviously less contact time. Obviously, the players have started to come back in on day release now. So, for example, on a Friday, I'll do some analysis with under 12s, looking at just different things, whether it be best practice or performances from the weekend. And the same kind of goes for the other age groups, really. We utilise in-play for individuals to look at their stuff with coaches sometimes when they go on day release, and then as well to share videos and analysis with them. But it is more very, well, probably I'd say next to no opposition based from 9s to 15s, and then you might dabble a little bit of opposition stuff at the 16s, but it's more or less from the previous game that you've played against them, and again trying to focus on how we're going to play as a team, and trying to develop those individuals to get them ready for either the next step in their age group at 13s, 14s, or if they're moving up to the PDP and the 18s from the 16s, and so on and so forth from there. And then 18s and 21s, obviously, we play in leagues, so there's a lot more opposition-based stuff. We'll still do some development stuff, individual stuff, again, with the 21s using in-play. Lads can watch their clips and things like that, and again, just trying to develop the individual, get them used to seeing what it's like playing against opposition, how we're going to plan and prepare against opposition to hopefully then propel them when they go into the first team, that they're ready for complete performance and obviously playing for points all the time, and having that winning mentality when they go into a first team, but obviously being a well-rounded player and a well-rounded person.
Yeah, perfect. Because last time we spoke a few weeks ago, you said something about how many academy lads you had in that made either an appearance or on the bench for the first team this season. So what was that? Was quite a decent number you mentioned. I don't know if you know it.
Yeah, I think it was around 11. I think it was around 11 that had either played or been on the bench, and obviously as coaches and as an academy, they set a target of how many they want, and I know we exceeded that. I can't remember what the target was, but like as an academy, it's good to see that, but also good to see that the manager can trust younger players. Obviously, it's not. Obviously, we have a helping hand, and we'll try and help the player as much as we can. But if they put the effort in, then hopefully they get the reward. And if there's a manager who will do that, and it's obviously satisfying to see that you've got players that are making their way through. Obviously, I didn't really have much interaction with Hayden Hackney, who was more before I came up to the 21s, but I certainly know like the 21s coaches and would have been involved with him before. I'll be happy to see him doing really, really well for the first team. And even if a player goes out on loan, to see them making it to first team levels is satisfying and is a good part of the job. But obviously, we just want to keep developing the players who are still coming through and hopefully make that number bigger.
Yeah, definitely. I suppose it obviously benefits the even younger ones, because if the 15-year-olds and the 16-year-olds know that it's possible and there's 10, 11 people, that have gone through, then they'll think, well, why not me? So, that's actually achievable. So, yeah, I'm sure that kind of has a knock-on effect all the way down. So in terms of then just a kind of the academy in general, Mike, so obviously for those that don't know, like academies are kind of categorized, in terms of all around the country. So Boro, what category are they, and kind of what does that mean, if you can explain that, and just kind of then we'll speak about the kind of other people that you have working relationships with, so the other analysts, the coaches and stuff. So first on the actual category, really, Mike, if you can.
Yeah, so I'm not overly aware of exactly the full ins and outs of the EPP, but we're category 1. Essentially, that means we're one of the best academies in the country. They've been category 1 since the introduction of the EPP, I think either back in 2011, 12, 13, around that time. It's been around for a while now. Yep. As I said, I think it means something from the Premier League. You get a bit of money from the Premier League or something like that. But I think to a T, it's down to your production of your academy. And obviously, as I mentioned with the 11 players, I think we've been really, really successful in generating money for the club through academy players, or seeing academy players step on to be first team players. And I said I don't really know the full ins and outs of the EPP and the full requirements, but we're Cat 1, and it means I think it means from an analysis perspective we have to have at least 3 full-time analysts, I believe. Yeah. Which is better for like younger age groups, for example. So if we play a Cat 2 club, their 18s analysts might also be doing the 16s, or they might have an intern doing the 16s. And no disrespect to an intern, it obviously is not as strong as a professional. They might not be there all the time, and therefore the players get more development from that perspective as well, and obviously more contact time with the coaches as well. And so I think that's how we can directly affect it, obviously being Cat 1. But then also it means we get to play against the best academies in the country as well. So obviously I know the 18s league, they're regionalised, so our 18s will play against Liverpool, Man United, Man City. The 21s league, I know that's divisioned. It might be changing, I'm not sure from what I've read. But still we could, if we got promoted, play against the Cities, Chelsea's, Arsenals of the world. And obviously there's the Premier League Cup as well, which we play in.
Yeah. Perfect. So Cat 1, obviously one of the highest ranking you can get in England in terms of the academy. So that's great. So then in terms of then the players themselves, because when we've had conversations before in terms of them watching the players watching the clips and stuff, see the term that gets brought up a lot is like IDP, so individual development plans, learning plans. Can you kind of talk about how they look like with an academy player as each? And this might change as they kind of go from 9s, obviously, all the way up, and it changes as they develop as a player. But what is the purpose of them, and what do they entail, if you can kind of describe them a little bit, Matty?
So it's just about giving them, and us as coaches, obviously recognising recognizing what they need to do to improve. Obviously, sometimes they might have something that they're strong at and they need to develop as well to really make it like their super strength in a way. And then again, but it differs really. Obviously, it's individual, so every player has a different one. They, you know, they each have their own thing that they need to work towards and to improve. The same goes right the way down to the under nines. Obviously, I think under nines to kind of 12s level, it is slightly different just because they're still really raw talents. But as they get older, they definitely get a tailored specific plan to them. Like you say, it's individual, and hopefully next season with things we plan to do, we can utilize in play to really drive that home and get the players as well. Because sometimes it's difficult to get players to really take ownership of their individual learning plan. So that's sometimes half the battle, is particularly getting them to watch their clips to look out for specific things regarding their ILPs, and the same like I've done at previous clubs. Players watching their clips to learn themselves as well, because it can't just come from the coaches, can't just come from the sports scientists, the analysts, the physios. Players do have to take ownership of their own careers, and having an individual learning plan gives them a sort of track to run along with that. And obviously from there, obviously we can help subsidize different things with data or video and different things like that. But
so I think you're definitely correct in the fact that obviously different players will be obviously different in the way that will they engage more. Like, you'll always get some that are really keen for it and they love clips, but some are just not arsed or whatever, and that's probably is a battle for you, because obviously that's your job to kind of encourage them to do that. But you can only go so far, and like I say, it's their career, so if they're not putting the time and effort in, then it's kind of on them as well. So in terms of them then, so I know, so when we spoke before, like you guys as analysts, obviously you're clipping things and then they're watching the clips. Do you ever, because I know I've heard this before, like, do you ever ask, are the players ever clipping as well, or is that more just they kind of review the clips and maybe select some things? Or
so the younger age groups definitely have done that a lot more. Certainly on their day release, like slot where they maybe do some analysis utilizing in play, watching their clips from the previous game, kind of like a too good, too bad kind of thing. Two things did good and two things did bad, and then they would share that with the coach and then use in play again to communicate, because obviously they can do it from at home as well, or because obviously sometimes people aren't allowed out of school for day release for if they've got a test or something like that, so they can still go home that evening and do it and kind of share and reflect on their performance from the weekend. And then hopefully that's something next season with the 21s we're going to do on a much larger scale. But it is definitely something that they do. I wouldn't say they necessarily clip their own stuff, because all their clips are there. It's just about them selecting it, putting it into a playlist and different things like that. We do most of the legwork on game days and things like that for them, so that when they come to watch their clips, they're only watching around 7 minutes and not 80, 81. Obviously, sometimes it's difficult. At the minute, we don't do away games. Hopefully next season, that's something that I'm hoping that will change anyway, just with a bit more reshuffle with our intern structure. But, they know anyway. If they scored a really good goal, they always know where it is anyway. And if they've done a good nutmegs, particularly at the younger age groups, they always know to find it, and it's good. So that's when they'll clip stuff. But
So then, what's the setup like? Because I've been an academy analyst before many years ago. I did that while I was at uni at Sheffield United, and at that time it was the first team was in one building and the academy was totally set. Is that the same at Boro? Are you together? Or
we're all in the same building, but in just different areas of the building. We're on the bottom floor, down the bottom in a big row of offices, and then the first team obviously upstairs in their own office. At lunchtime and stuff, we'll bump into each other, and we've got a good working relationship with the first team. Obviously, they do their thing and we do ours. I've helped them out on occasions, done a couple of games towards the start of last season with Phil, who I think you've had on before. But they're really good guys, and obviously, how we work is different to them, and they have their own things that they do, and we do ours. It's not something that we really speak about much, just because, like I said, we've got different objectives really, and
Yeah.
Obviously, ours is more based around player development and trying to grow players. As obviously around the performance side of things, really trying to do what they can for the team to get 3 points at the weekend. Obviously, 18s and 21s, we want to get as many points as we can, but equally we want to make sure that players are ready to step up to the first team in a good way and whatnot. So there is that difference, but we got a good working relationship with them, so it's good in that sense.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, because I think obviously I know about we know, but there's a lot of people may not realise that obviously they are like the role of an academy analyst and a first team is a different job, like because of the things you've mentioned in terms of development and the actual objectives and goals. So definitely something to consider. So on that kind of topic, then, so I've got by the time this goes out, it will already come out, but I've got a video on kind of different relationships that you have in terms of different members of staff within your department. So how does the academy look? So obviously you've mentioned you've got other analysts in there, you've got some interns. Like what other kind of people are you interacting with, Matty, in terms of coaches and academy director potentially?
Yeah, so you have a day-to-day with everyone from sports scientists, physios, Leeds academy manager, the coaches, the operations ladies, and then the recruitment guys who are next door to us. We all work in like our own department office, which is strange because it's the first time I've ever done it that way. At Leeds, it was obviously everyone in the 9s to 18s all in one big office, and then the same with at Wolves. Everyone, it was kind of foundation and youth development phase, and then 16s and 18s, and then 23s. Yeah. So it's a different way of working. You probably get a bit more done because your coaches maybe aren't, you're not engaging in some conversations, but it's difficult to explain. I think I probably prefer it being like the full MDT, so the full 23s, because then you're involved around conversations with players. Like you're there when the coach needs something or wants something. Like for example, like if I've gone to the toilet or stuff, having lunch with the coach comes down and you're not there, it's like, tell him, and then I'll go looking for him, and then he might not be there. And whereas if you're in the office, you know that you're there with each other, but then equally, as an analysis department, we're together. I can quickly sort problems out with them, and if we've got questions or anything, or something goes wrong with something, we're there to quickly sort it out with each other. And so it has its pros and its cons. I think just because I've worked that way before, I prefer to be with the MDT, but equally because of it's just the way it goes. And like I said, sports scientists obviously all in one office near the gym. Same with the physios and that. So it has its benefits, but it also has its drawbacks. And there isn't really a way that works perfectly because, if you're all in one office, then the sports scientists and the physios are away from the gym, and if a player needs them or needs treatment, what have you. So there's never really a way, but that's kind of the way we work at Boro. And I know a lot of clubs are like that, have separate departments and things like that.
Yeah. In terms of like probably more for younger ones, do you as the analyst have anything to do with like the parents of like say the under 12s or under 9s? Like, do you ever interact with them, or is that not?
We tend to not. The only time we'll really interact with them is via email. If they usually email us about something, we'll have a point of contact when we create their account. For like in play, for example, we'll set them up an account, but we'll give that to them. They'll create their own in play and login. Then we'll send them tutorial videos, and we'll say any questions, ask us. Usually nobody does, so probably the tutorial videos are quite good. But usually if like I said, if a parent needs a video, like sometimes an under 9 might play up with the under 10s, or like a 12 might play up with the 13s, and because they're maybe not on the under 13s in play page, we've got to shuffle a couple of things around, get them onto that page so they can see that game from the weekend and those sorts of things. So, but we tend to not really interact with them. No, sometimes they'll come and less so with me, but with the interns and Alex, who's the 16th lad, they'll sometimes go and speak to him about stuff. I try to encourage them to not allow that to happen, because obviously they're trying to work and I don't want them to miss stuff. But equally, sometimes parents just like to come and have a chat, and it's good for us obviously to be seen and interact so they know who we are. But equally, obviously their main focus has to be on their kid and the coaching side of things. Obviously, if they've got problems, they like I said again, they just email us, they drop us an email, or they'll drop the coach an email and they'll just forward them onto us. But yeah, we tend to not really have much of an interaction with them.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so and then just kind of trying to get a picture of, and this is probably in your current role then as maybe, well, 21's your focus, but you're obviously overseeing the lot. So what does your average week look like in season then, Matty? And just kind of a few caveats to that. Are you guys filming training as well? And does that obviously differ between the age groups? So what do you get up to in an average week?
Yeah, so average week really, obviously, it'll work game to game rather than week to week. So, for example, if we're playing, sometimes we'll play Monday, Friday. Um, the week will kind of be a bit of a strange one. But for example, if we play Monday to Monday, after the game on the Monday, I'll go home, upload everything, send everything out that needs to be sent out, and then from there, we'll be in the next day, do a post match with the 21s, and then kind of review that with the players and the coaches, go through stuff like that, and then individual stuff from there. Then I'll start watching the next game. So, for example, if we're playing on the Monday upcoming, I'll start watching the opposition, putting stuff together on them. And then from there, training, we don't film it every day, just because, well, sometimes it doesn't need to be. For example, 21's a matter, and we have 6 players training, but things are crazy. If they ask for it to be filmed, then I'll go out and film it. I might clip, if we're doing match prep sessions, things like that, or things that relate to the game that's coming up, I might clip different bits and bobs of that we'll put in the pre-match meeting. But then, so I'll kind of work towards the opposition, then we'll go through all the opposition stuff with the coaches, and they'll devise how they're going to play. Again, very rarely changes. Obviously, we've got our own way of playing, and obviously we want to try and impose our style on the opposition, but obviously we have to take into account what they do, how we can hurt them. And then from there, I'll start putting together the meeting for the players as well. And then in and around that, I'll do some stuff for day release with the 12s, based on what the coach wants that week for them. And then on like the Friday on their day release, we'll go through that with them. And then obviously in and around days off and things like that, we'll do match prep session with the 21s, either do like a walkthrough or different styles of match preparation sessions. Nothing, again, just depends on numbers. And then obviously we'll have the game day, and I really enjoy game days. They're really good fun. Obviously we'll live code, clip things live, obviously film the game, and then repeat the process pretty much, really.
Yeah, definitely. So I mean, from like the 21s is very similar to the first team, as you said. They're basically at that point where they could well be actually just drafted into the first team at probably at any point, and obviously it is about winning at that stage. So in terms of then, like, you've done the game, and say you're doing like do you say you do like a post match presentation the day after or something? Do you do like a debrief on that, or?
So it'll vary when it's done. Usually I'll have all the clips done the day after, and then, but again, to do with players, and if the players are available, they might be with the first team doing different things. So when we actually do the meeting with the 18s, I know they've got a much more set structure because they're always around. Whereas like with 21s, it's a bit more difficult sometimes, and getting the players in and whatnot. So it just varies. But yeah, me and the coaches will sit through some clips and stuff like that. Have a look. It's sometimes a bit difficult because where we play, the angles aren't. We play at non-league ground, so when we perhaps play at a big stadium, we might get a bit more out of it because the angle's better. We can see more. Like I said, we can get more out of it, more development, more tactical things. But we still do it when obviously after every game. But sometimes like the angle might not be as wide, so sometimes it adds that difficulty to it. But equally, we'll still get something out of it, and then obviously showcase that to players, whether it be the day after or 2 days. Sometimes we've done it if we've had like a Monday Friday week, we'll do it like the training day, like the match prep day. We'll do that, and we'll kind of pick out bits that we're gonna maybe try and improve on in that training session, and go from there, really.
Yeah, and so in terms of then, do you ever get? I know you feed these things back to players, maybe in groups or in the whole team and stuff. Because I remember when I was at, again going back a long time, when I was at Sheffield United, we used to do that as well. But then we would have certain players, and I remember one of them was Dominic Calvert-Lewin, who was in the 16s when I was there. So he used to always come in like basically off his own back and want to watch you. Do you get players that are like that seek you out almost and say, I want to take it upon myself to see my clips or to see a bit extra?
Yeah, there is a few, definitely. Some as well, like perhaps if they've missed a meeting for whatever reason, they'll come in and they'll ask to sit through the meeting, or if they're not clear on stuff. But again, that is solely down to the players and what they do. There is definitely some that do that to their credit. But again, that it's not some, we'd encourage players to do it, but equally you have to leave it up to them, and you don't want them doing it for the sake of doing it. Like, you want them to get something out of it, and even if it's they want to look at a specific clip or a specific bunch of clips, that's better than them just coming in and saying wanting to sit through my clips and just sitting there in silence watching their clips, because it makes them look like they're doing something. You want them to get something out of it, and sometimes you have discussions with them in the corridor about stuff. It might be even at half time in a game, for example, you're showing them something about their game that can maybe help them in the second half. For example, like one of our fullbacks opening up, taking his touch towards space instead of being closed off. We've shown him quite a few times at half time, but that's probably something. And then, like, for example, a number 10, maybe if they don't play there a lot, maybe trying to find and drift into pockets that you can do in game as well. So it doesn't necessarily always have to be after the game, or even like just before a game. If maybe an under 18 stepped up to play with us, or last game of the season we had a couple of under 16s. One of the under 16s didn't see the pre-match, so I sat with him before the game when he arrived to just kind of talk him through it. And so just little things like that. Like I said, it doesn't always have to be big long things where they come in and watch every single clip. It can be, like I said, one clip, two clips, and all ranging all the way to all of them if they're willing to have that discussion. But it's really up to them, and that ownership's on them.
Perfect. So one thing I wanted to speak about, Matty, is so you mentioned kind of interns. So you've got some interns that come in and help you out. So in terms of so I'm presuming you kind of are a part of the hiring process and choosing which interns come in. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. So this year we again, we're just slightly changing our intern structure. Just kind of, I know the feeling as an intern when sometimes it can maybe feel a bit stale, or you've come in, you've filmed games, and then it gets to December and it's starting to get cold, and you're like, oh, is this all I'm doing? And so next year we're hoping to try and give them a little bit more, and obviously hopefully through using in play. But yeah, we will look at, again, we're doing it slightly different this year, so how that'll work. But previous, I'm assuming it'll be very similar. Previous, we've got ours from Northumbria. I think we're changing to Teesside this year, which is closer. But
No, I was just going to ask you basically in terms of like that, and maybe I don't know if you've been a part of like an interview process or anything like that, Mike. That was kind of where I was leading in terms of what. If people are watching this and they've got an interview coming up, whether it's for an internship or a job, or like a full paid job, is what kind of things would you be looking for as the person sat on the other side of the desk really asking the questions?
Yeah, so interns we don't really interview as such. We might kind of have a quick chat with them about what they're doing, but like the uni usually will deal with that. If they get lots and lots of people wanting to do it, that's maybe where we'll say, right, okay, we might have to select. But they're interns. We're not expecting, the whole point of an internship is to gain experience, and obviously if they've got it, happy days. If they're maybe going for a master's internship, that's where where they would have an interview really, and that's where they'd use their undergrad experience, and that's what we want to give them next season, is a bit more to try and maybe step on and kick on and do that. But interns really just want enthusiasm, people who are willing to, obviously I know you're not getting paid, some clubs you might be getting paid, most you don't. So it's just about enthusiasm, enjoyment of the game, and just a willingness to learn, a bit like being a sponge, just trying to soak everything up that you can, and and from there different opportunities will grow. It's not going to just fall into your lap. You will have to start coming in and filming, but then if you show enthusiasm and take opportunities, and then more opportunities will come to you. But whereas obviously I've done a couple of interviews now for a couple of people, and obviously for the full-time jobs, and obviously it's difficult because everybody's different. Everybody has a different way of thinking, and different clubs are looking for different things. But again, you want to show people to show enthusiasm in their interviews, and obviously, but when they're interviewing for a full-time job, I think the baseline is, what's their knowledge like? What are they like as a person? What they're articulating, is it is it necessarily correct, because football is a game of opinions, but how are they articulating that? Some of it might be wrong, but just making sure that they articulate their points well. What they're saying is with knowledge, and then for us, there's like extra things probably that I particularly might look for, or other people do as well. I know for certain. So clips, for example, I know if you may be coming from a master's thing, you might not be able to tell a straight clips, but just making your presentation look really good and different things like that. Researching the club as well. Previous interviews, we've given like games that could be, there's information out there on the game, and people who, you get people who go away and get the full starting 11 and different things like that. That just makes it look like they've obviously put a lot of effort in. And then I think as well, you're trying to sell yourself to the people behind, like you say, behind the desk. You're trying to sell yourself. So obviously, there might be questions where they ask to talk about yourself. Obviously, talk about your experiences. But bring your own work with you. For example, like bring examples of your own work. I know sometimes a lot of it's now all stored on the computer, but if you can print something, print it off and give it to them when you walk in and things like that, because then they've got, as interviewers, you've got something to hold on to. And in the interview process can be long. They usually last about an hour, and there could be 4, 5, 6 people getting interviewed. So if you can give that interviewer something to remember you with, they've got an example of your work, they can see how you work. It might not be exactly to their tasting, but they can see, well, it's good work. We'd obviously get them aligned with how we do it here at this club, but it, like I said, it gives them something else to see aside from, because a lot of the time, sometimes you might have 3 people who have all picked out the same thing from a game. They're all on a similar level. So what can you do to really make yourself stand out? And something as simple as just bringing, I don't know, maybe a written opposition report that you've done, or an example of some data work that you've done, things like that, and taking it to the next level, and obviously without doing it overkill. Knowing what maybe is the right amount, particularly for the role. For an academy analyst, we might not be looking for loads and loads of stuff on how Ajax build out from the back and whatnot, and how Bayern Munich press in the mid-third, things like that. If you've then linked that to like academy and how you can learn and develop, okay, very good. But recognize what role you're going for as well, and try and link your work and link what you're saying in the interview to that role, rather than thinking everybody wants to know. It's not the same as being a first team analyst.
Definitely.
In that way.
No, 100% agree. So, because I've got a video specifically linked to kind of interviews, and a lot of the things that you said is in that, in terms of that giving a piece of work. It's about standing out. So if they can remember you by a piece of work that's demonstrated you can do the skills, but a lot of the questions, I think as well, like not everything, but a lot of the questions that you will get asked can be kind of almost, they kind of come in. So if you do prep for an interview, you can kind of, rather than then stumbling upon an answer, you can kind of have something in your head that probably will come and will be asked. So you've kind of got a better way of answering that. So if you
I think as well, if you're at a club, ask the person you're with to do a mock interview maybe, or what sort of questions would you ask, because it gives you an idea of what's to come. Maybe obviously every club's different, but usually they'll ask similar things along the line of general questions. Obviously there'll be questions specific to a game. So for example, I helped one of our interns with one of his interviews for his masters that he eventually got. And he said that helped him a lot. Obviously it's up to him to go and get the job, but it just helps to put your mind at ease and things like that. And like I said, they might ask you a question that then comes up in your actual interview, and you can think, oh well, this is what I said then, and that's what he told me to say. And it just helps, again, to, like I say, put your mind at ease and make it look as if you are, well, not make it look, but it just shows that you're prepared, and that sets a good impression.
Yeah, because you're going to be like obviously it's a nerve-wracking situation to be in, but again, it kind of does blow my mind a bit that people don't prep for it because you know you to get the interview in the first place, you've obviously beat off probably hundreds of people, and then they're interviewing 5 to 10 people for this role, let's say, and you basically got to beat them. Like you want the job, so why not put that bit of extra time in at the day before to really like the mock interview is a good shout. Like if you've got someone to do that that's in that kind of similar position to the interview that they would be, then yeah, it's like a good tool to practice. So yeah, that's definitely a good shout.
And it might not even be that like, a mock interview. Our intern, I just said to him, we can go through all your stuff, like your presentation and things like that, and because sometimes from previous experience, people sometimes less is more. They might have a point on someone on a right back in his 1v1 defending, but they might have 7 or 8 clips.
Yeah,
But they can make the point with 2 clips,
yeah,
one good, one bad, or you know, particularly again if they're going for an academy analyst job, how you know how can they link it to a young player? What does it come across like to a young player? I'm guilty of it myself sometimes, but in interviews, you haven't got, you might have 10, 15 minutes to present, and you want to make a point on one thing. If you're going to do 2 points, if you're doing lots and lots of points, maybe you want, but again, that goes back to the less is more, but you'll want concise detail. But for example, if you're doing one out of possession point, one in possession point, you'll want that to be as detailed as possible. And, the feedback I gave with our intern is that, like I said, less is more. Sometimes you don't need 7 or 8 clips per point.
yeah.
And that is, a good piece of advice. But like I said, even if they just walk through a presentation with whoever they're with, or, it can be a real help because they can practice what they're going to say over it, and they can get feedback from an analyst as well who's maybe done interviews before and maybe help them pinpoint areas that's helpful to them.
Yeah, definitely. So in terms of going back to kind of you then, Matty, really like in terms of what's kind of your goals for longer term goals for the future? Do you see yourself being a first team analyst at some point? Do you kind of what's kind of in your future, do you think?
I think it's easy to get caught up in the whole, I want to do this, I want to do that. I think I've worked with so Alex, who was here before, worked for England ladies, and some of the stuff he was talking about with me, it sounds really interesting. So I think maybe one day getting into the FA, whether that be one of the younger age groups or maybe the first team, and just kind of getting that as an experience, seeing what that's like, and having the opportunity to do that as well. And but Ross, who I also worked with, he did it with the Scottish FA as well, and working with the national team and seeing what it's like on a national setup. But really, I'm in no rush to recognise that I've jumped up quite quickly.
Yeah, you are.
So there's no major rush. Obviously, things change, and you don't know what's out there. But I think as a real long term goal, I think probably to work for England's first team would be fantastic. But getting into like the FA is probably something that excites me because I'm happy at Middlesbrough. That, like I said, I recognise I've jumped up quite quickly. So it's not about rushing my career or rushing myself, but there's different. I want to experience different things. It would be nice as well, perhaps to go and see what other clubs do worldwide. Your top clubs wide, but obviously you've got you're in the time you're in work there and work as well. And when you're off, they're all off. So it's one of them that you keep tabs on, and any videos that come up on YouTube, things like that, I watch and different stuff.
Yeah, perfect. Well, we'll clip this, Matty, in about 10 years when you're England's first team analyst. We'll see how that goes. So, so in terms of one thing I do kind of ask everyone that's on here, Matty, I don't know if you're a reader or whatever, but do you have any recommendation of any books or any podcasts that you want to give a shout out to?
I don't really read a lot. I read the Athletic articles a lot. But again, I don't really listen to. I'm not one of these people who listens to I don't listen to Jake Humphrey's high performance podcasts or anything like that.
No.
I just kind of I watch. There's a guy on YouTube. Well, see, there's Tifo Football. I listen to their podcast.
Yeah,
they're good. Their videos on YouTube are good as well. Then I don't know. Sometimes I listen to the diary of a CEO if it's someone that's interesting on it.
Yeah.
It's good to just hear that because they're quite good in-depth podcast interviews. And then there's a guy on where obviously I listen to a lot of golf podcasts as well, watch a lot of golf stuff.
Yeah.
I like my rugby union as well, so I'll sometimes listen to podcasts around them. There's a guy on YouTube called Squid Rugby. Don't know if anyone's ever mentioned him, but he's a really good YouTuber that does really good in-depth rugby analysis videos. But he's quite funny as well at the same time.
Yeah.
So I watch him because I do think it's good to see what other sports do analysis-wise, even though I probably wouldn't go work in them. I know England Rugby have released 2 videos of what their performance analysts do.
Yeah.
But Squid Rugby is a really good one, and for any budding rugby analyst out there, he's again different because he's picking apart performances, and it might be different to what rugby people do. I don't really know, but I think he got really good depth of knowledge and whatnot. And then, but yeah, Athletic. I'd encourage people to subscribe to the Athletic because there's all sorts on there, whether it's American football in general. Reading about just what goes on behind the clubs. They've got a really good tactics podcast as well, that I sometimes listen to, and they've got really good tactics writers as well. So reading up on that's probably the extent of where my reading goes.
Yeah.
And then just anything that really pops up on my phone, really, I'll read. But I'm not someone who goes out buying all these inspirational books and things.
No, that's fine, no problem. I mean, the 2 videos you mentioned, England Rugby on their analysis, I've seen them. They're really interesting. So definitely, if you can find them, it's worth a watch for them for sure. So that's basically everything I've got down, Matty. So is there anything you want to add? Anything you want to give a shout out to? Where can people find you? You're on LinkedIn, obviously. So feel free, people connect with you.
Feel free to connect. I'm a bit more selective these days, just because sometimes you get so many people. But I scroll through LinkedIn a lot. I don't really post anything on there. Again, it's not really me. But if people message me, I tend to reply to them. Sometimes I forget, but that's just me as a person, not me being awful. But no, it's been good. Be good to get on and speak, and obviously look forward to working with Impay again this year and stepping on forward in that regard as well. But no, it's been good to be on, Chris.
Nice. Yeah, no, appreciate you. Like I said, I didn't actually mention this is the second time in the way because you had we planned this before and you had a power cut rearranged. So we're glad to get it done. So, and again, enjoy the rest of your time off over the summer. Good luck next season and all that sort of stuff. Good luck. And I'll probably speak to you soon anyway. But yeah, thanks again, Matty, and have a good day, mate.
Yeah. No worries. Thank you very much, Chris. See you later.
Cheers, mate.